All right, yesterday we learned in the Dvar Malchut. Dvar Malchut are speeches that were given by Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1991, 1992. And these are the last speeches that the Rebbe gave before he had a stroke, which rendered him unable to speak. And all of these speeches were, of course, put into essay form. And they deal mostly with Moshiach and what Moshiach will do, and the necessity of realizing that Moshiach is our only hope. And in fact, it's the goal of Judaism. That's what Abraham started. Abraham started this whole process of revealing God in the world, the creator and the creation, the reason for the creation in the creation. And this revolves around the world. And therefore, God gave the Jews the land of Israel, a physical land, a physical place, in addition to giving them the physical Torah and the physical commandments, and putting them in God in the world. And this was begun, of course, by the circumcision, like we just finished learning. But really, the Torah tells us that it hints to us that Abraham served God way before this Torah portion begins. Before the Torah, the first really conversation that we see between God and Abraham, and the whole history of Abraham and his biography, what Abraham did, it begins when Abraham was 75 years old, because that's when God told him to go to the land of Israel. So the whole thing revolves around the land of Israel. The land of Israel becomes tremendously central in this whole story of the creation of the world and of the reason for the creation of the world and the purpose of the Jewish people to inform all mankind what is the purpose of the creation of the world. And that there is a creator, and that the creator has a reason for each and every human being. But this all centers around the physical world, Israel, a place. Okay. Now, of course, this all revolves also around the fact that the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and they got out and they received the Torah. So what Abraham did here was prepare for this giving of the Torah. Because when God gave the Torah, that really separates Judaism from anything in the world. There's absolutely nothing even comparable. No religion or philosophy or science fiction book or anything. I mean, I'm not an expert in science fiction, but that the whole entire nation of people, that they're still here, you can see them. They're walking around, right? And they know who they are. They were all slaves in Egypt. They're direct descendants from Abraham. And they were put in they served, and they were slaves in a country for like 200 years. And they got out with big miracles, and that God spoke to them all. God gave his directions to a whole entire nation of 3 million people, and they all passed this down from generation to generation, right? Generation to generation. That God spoke to us. How do I know? My father told me. How do I know? His father told him. So it's been passed down from generation to generation, that every word of the Torah is true. And it says in the Torah that there was a man called Abraham, and that God promised him the land of Israel. And the fact is, it's written somewhere in the soul of every Jew as well. Jews know somehow or other that this is their land. I mean, Jews deny it, or Jews are ignorant of it, or Jews, they oppose it, they pretend they don't know it, see it, or whatever. But the fact is, there's sufficient a number of Jews, and it's written in the Torah. Everybody knows it. Okay, so that's the idea of the Torah and the Jews and God and the world. And this all centers around what happened in this week's Torah portion. God told Abraham, Lech lecha, go out from your land, go out. This is a very central theme in Judaism, an essence, a basis of Judaism is you have to go out. What does it mean? Shaychos lekinyan eser aratzot, the whole idea that Moshiach is going to come and land of Israel will be much bigger than it is now. It'll be what God promised to Abraham. God promised to Abraham 10 nations, the land of 10 nations, and we only received 7. Mashiach will bring the other 3. And the preparation for receiving all these 10 lands, the preparation for this is this week's Torah portion, Lech Lecha, going. Tochen, Behaktim Abir. Let's first of all explain what is Lech Lecha Me'artzecha. What does exactly it means? What does it mean going out? What are we supposed to go out? Go out where? This is the beginning of the preparation of the receiving of the Torah. It's a message for each one of us. We have to do it. What do we have to do? Go out of yourself. What do you mean go out of? What are you supposed to do? How do you go out of yourself? If you go out of yourself, so who's the self and who's the you? There's two. If it would say change yourself, improve yourself, modify yourself, okay, what does it mean? Go out of yourself. Lech, go out of yourself. What does it mean? And that's an essential thing in Judaism, and that's like the theme of Judaism, and that's the whole preparation for the giving of the Torah. That's it. Let me just turn off. I have an air conditioner going on over here, and it's blasting away, so let me turn it off. 1 second. The whole novelty of the giving of the Torah is God took the whole Jewish nation. They all stood around Mount Sinai, middle of the desert. Every day there was raining man in the morning, water from a rock. They were surrounded by clouds of protection, glory. And all of a sudden, God started to speak to everybody, and their souls jumped out of their bodies. And he gave them the Torah, the 10 Commandments. The whole novelty of the giving of the Torah is that then was brought about, Hachiburam shel Elyonim v'Tachtonim, the Creator with the creation, the upper with the lower. The Bittul Gezerah was removed, the decree that God made, she'Elyonim lo yirdu the Tachtonim, but Tachtonim lo yalu Elyonim. Like we learned in Torah Or. God wanted the world not to feel him. That's why he made a world. He made a world. One of the conditions of the world is that the world would not feel that there's a creator. The world would not feel. In order to do this, God made hundreds, thousands, whatever, of contractions and concealments and veils that are talked about in these Kabbalistic books. So we wouldn't feel reality. And we've got to break through this somehow or other. Well, before the Torah was given, this was almost absolute. In order for a person to feel that there's a creator, he had to totally leave the world. Like Avram, it was outside of the world. You have to ignore the world totally. After the Torah was given, this was all changed. After the Torah was given, Shedargot Elokut, the levels of godliness, Shehem Lagamri, that they are totally above the world, Yumshechu were drawn down and revealed into the lower world. Shanivroim, that the creations of Tachtonim, Yehi Be'efsharutam, that would be possible for them, Litached, to unite, Im Elyonim, with the upper. Shal Yedei Kiyam HaMitzvahs, by doing commandments, B'devorim Gashmi, physical things, Yaseh Chefetz HaGashmi, physical things could become holy. Ad Asher, until Tiyadir Lo, the whole world will become a dwelling for God. Dir Lo Liatzmuto, a dwelling for God's essence. Maybe I can give an example. I don't know if this is a good example, but I'll give it. Let's say there's a person that's a genius in music, but he's deaf. Right? There are people that were just geniuses in music. Right? Some people you can't believe the music. I'm just giving music as an example. I mean, there's other things as well, but so they're geniuses. That's how the whole world was before God gave the Torah. The world, they were all potential geniuses in godliness, but they didn't know it. The world was deaf. So what did God do? He made an operation took the Jews out of Egypt, made an operation, changed them a little bit. When they were in Egypt, they had to suffer, and they got out. And then God made the big operation. He opened up the upper worlds. Now they could hear. All of a sudden, you could hear godliness, you could feel godliness, you could see godliness. Godliness was available to the world. True, it was only a temporary revelation. It didn't last long. But nevertheless, everybody knew that there was something. It's like the deaf person suddenly now he knows what music is. He knows what music is. So he does everything that he can in order to reopen this channels, whatever. But still, after he can hear a little tiny bit, so he decides maybe, when he pounds on something, it makes a noise, and then he brings a string, he can change the tones, and eventually it comes out of this that he can make a piano, and he can make a violin, and he becomes the same thing by revealing godliness in the world, in this whole new type of reality of harmony that we weren't aware of. Suddenly you can take the physical world and you can make the whole world into instruments to serve God with. And that was the whole purpose of giving the Torah. Not that the power of, what I brought was just an example. I don't know if it's a good example, but it's just an example of a new sense of harmony and reality. When God revealed himself in the world, suddenly you realize the whole world can be made into a big instrument to reveal not just music, but to reveal godliness, order, life, meaning, joy, blessing. That's when he's revealing the upper worlds came into lower worlds, even the simplest person, to make the whole entire world a dwelling for God. Inyan zeh, this, hechil with the tzivui, with the commandment of Abraham. Abraham was the one who opened up the way. Lech lecha me'artzecha. When God commanded Abraham, go out from your land and your birthplace and the house of your father to the land that I will show you, and especially by means of doing a commandment, milah, a physical commandment in the world, circumcision. Gam kodem, even before God said to Abraham, Lech lecha me'artzecha, go out from your land. Kasher haya Avram, when Abraham was 70, when did God give Abraham the commandment of circumcision and change his name? When he was 99. This week's Torah portion begins when Abraham was 75, when God told Abraham to leave where he was and go to Israel. Eved Avram, I'm sorry, even before Abraham was 75, even before God told Abraham to go out, Abraham served his service in the place where he was born, Ubeit Aviv, in the place where he was born in Or Kasdim or wherever, then Haron. Some people say it's the same place. Uba Ofen Nala, in a very high way. And he recognized, it says in the Midrash that Abraham recognized God when he was 3 years old, and when he was then 40 years old. He served God and he advertised God in the world. Metoch Mesirat Nefesh, and with self-sacrifice, he said he used to go around and break all the idols. He was thrown into a fiery furnace. Like it says, but the Kibshan Aishi was thrown into a fiery furnace in a place called Or Kasdim. And according to the Rambam, like the Maimonides, he explains in a long length the greatness of Abraham before he was commanded Lech Lecha. So this Lech Lecha was the beginning of Abraham's service, but it really wasn't. Abraham was serving God way before. And he was breaking idols, and he was telling people that there's a creator. Kivan shenigmal eitan zeh, as soon as he was weaned from his mother's breast, 3 years old, as his mind started to think, until shehisig derech emet. All of a sudden, Abraham realized that there's God. V'yitchil lamod v'likro, and he started to call out into the whole world and let them know that there's a creator, one God, and he's creating everything. The world is not separate from God. Don't think that the world is also God. God means reality. The only real reality is God. And God is creating the whole world all the time. The world is just, if you want to call it, a manifestation of God. But God conceals over this so that we think the world is something separate. Abraham realized that it's not separate. The Hosif B'diuk Halashan, and he said, Eitan. Maimonides calls Abraham Eitan, this powerful one. This was a chozek v'tokef. She'Avram nitzav b'kol tokef. He stood with all the power against the whole entire world. That's why he's called Avram or Ivri. The word Hebrew, Ivri, means the opposite side. Kol olam kula, the whole entire world was on one side, and Abraham was on the other side. That's the way it's becoming now. V'lo hitpa'el mehem, and Abraham was not affected by them, even though shoya adayin Avram, even though that he was not yet Avraham. He was just this high, immensely high spiritual person. A high spiritual person, you think, if the world was against him, you say, okay, you know what? Drop dead, all you guys, go to hell. Who needs you? I'm going to go and meditate on God. No, that's not what he said. Abraham wanted to say, listen, fellas, you're making a mistake. Come on, there's one God. Don't worship idols. Don't be so selfish. And everybody said, let's throw him in a fiery furnace. Let's kill him. So a normal person would say, okay, enough. I've had enough with you guys. You don't want to receive. No, Abraham said, no, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to tell everybody. I'm ready. And he was not yet Avram. He still was not Avraham, the father of all nations. Nevertheless, the world had no effect on him. Not like Noah, that the world didn't have a negative effect on him. But on the other hand, he didn't have any effect on the world either, right? He just separated himself from the world. He said, these guys are a bunch of fools. I won't have anything to do with them. No. Abraham said, these people are a bunch of fools, and I want to make them stop being fools. I want to educate them. That was Abraham. That's why Abraham became the first Jew. He was self-sacrificing for advertising God and changing the world to a world that didn't want it, a world that resisted. And the world was created in a way that it would resist. That, by the way, is the source of anti-Semitism. The source of the Jews were put into the world in order to educate the world and to tell the world that there's God. And the world doesn't want to hear it. That's the way God made the world. And some people, sometimes they actively resist and sometimes passively resist. But there's some people that also accept the idea. And there's some people that accept it partially. On until Ofen Sha'avram Paul, he actually affected the place where he was. Shehagam, even though Shoya Charon, even though the place was called Charon, which comes from the language of Charon Av Shalom, the burning anger of God. Hafcho, Abraham transformed it, a nefesh asher aso b'Charon, that he actually convinced people in Charon to throw away their idols and throw away their selfishness and start to serve the Creator. Ad nikra al shemo, until it's called on his name. Artzecha, moladetecha. God said, go out from your land, from your birthplace, from your place where you were born. Abraham had such an effect on the land where he was that it was called his land, his place. Al Yadei, by means of Pulato, what he did, Shal Aviv Beit Aviv, by means of what he did, he had an effect on his father and on the house of his father. Like it says, Ata tavo lavotecha b'shalom, that Terach, Abraham's father, he repented. Abraham's father was like one of the big super manufacturers of idols. Idols, very popular, very successful manufacturer of idols. And people went to him and Abraham smashed all the idols. And Terach came in one day and said, what in the world, who did this? And Abraham left one idol, one big idol, and he put a big stick in his hand. And he said there was a big fight between the idols, and this big idol smashed all the others. And his father said, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, the idols can't do anything. They're not alive. And Abraham said, listen to what you just said. The 8 idols can't do anything, and nevertheless you worship them. They're made by you, and you worship them. Why? Because you're really worshiping yourself. You're really an egotist. Stop it. And Abraham, it says that his father reported him to Nimrod, and Abraham, because of that, was thrown into a fiery furnace. And miraculously, he escaped. And this is not even talked about in the 5 books of Moses. That's a pretty impressive story. It should be in the Jewish Bible to impress people, that you better watch out for us. You can't even throw us in a fire. No, it's only mentioned in Midrash because it's not important. What's important is what Abraham did for the Creator, that Abraham listened to what God said. That's the important thing, not the miracles that occurred to Abraham. Those are also important, but it's not. So it says to teach you, Terach, and his father that turned him in, right? His father also repented. And there was Abraham had an effect on everybody. Everybody. But nevertheless, Roy, we see that all the things that Abraham did before he was 75 years old, Torah is not mentioned at all in the written Torah. In Midrash, it's written, the oral Torah. Afilu ma shemasupar, even that what it says in the end of Parshas Noach, this is very, very short. In the last week's Torah portion, it says very short that Abraham was born. It doesn't say very much who his father was, who his brother was, who his sister was. V'umechin like it's, and he prepared, like it said in many places, sha'ad azan, until then, Abraham's service was in a way that the world around him remained that he and the world around him, despite his efforts to change everybody, it didn't really work. The world around him and him were two different things. Abraham was stuck in the upper worlds. Abraham knew that there was God, and the worst of the world knew that Abraham knew that there was God, but they didn't really feel it. There was the upper worlds and the lower worlds. Ruchnis v'gashmis, spiritual and physical, separate. The service of Abraham that was made, this was done by means of two ways, or by means of the fact that he was elevated from the world, Ava Ram, he was very high, and he made a big impression on everybody. He was infinitely higher than the world, or Benyanim, Shekain Paul Batocha Olam, or that he did things in the world. Even the things that Abraham Avram did in the world, he smashed the idols, he survived this being thrown into the fire, he convinced people, he made the nefesh b'charon. Nevertheless, everything still remained as it was. People weren't truly convinced. They were convinced that Abraham was very special and he impressed them, but it wasn't coming from them. Al Yadesha Avram, by means that Abraham did the commandment of Lech Lecha Me'artzecha, as soon as Abraham left his highness, his greatness, his spiritualness, his accomplishments that he had made, and he left his land, and he left his birthplace, and he left the house of his father, Ela Eretz Asher Areka, and he went to the place where God said, I will show you where to go. He threw himself totally on God. He said, God, surprise me. When he did that, he freed himself. He left all the mididos, all of the limitations, and all of the definitions, the regulos, and all of his custom, his habits, in his service of God. Until then, and even the good things that he did, and how he affected the world in a good way. He left it all. All the things that he did to make the land where he lived his land. He even left the levels of holiness that he had achieved before he was 75 years old. Right? He was the only person in the world that was thinking about this. That's pretty good. God said, leave it. Leave it. What you did up to now was wonderful, but forget it. Forget it. We're starting a new start. Who bittel gama medida vagbala. When he did that, he negated also any limitations that he had before. At the mechitzos v'hagazeros ben elyonim v'tachtonim. In other words, now anything that Abraham did, it so to speak wasn't him doing it. He just became a vessel of what God was doing. As if so, he didn't expect. All he could expect was that now God's going to do what he really wants to in this world. I'm going to be the vehicle. The things are going to go God's way in this world. And he started joining the upper worlds and the lower worlds. Now, any normal person that didn't do this would have given up a long time ago, because Abraham was tested by God 10 times. And tests mean, as we talked before, means terrible disappointments and frustrations and things that would send anybody into an ocean of anxiety and depression and confusion. God, the creator of the whole universe, here, just take this example of this. The creator of the whole universe told Abraham, I own the whole world. The whole world is me. I can do whatever I want. You think you've been successful up to now? It's nothing. You've been doing it on your terms. I'm going to give you success. You won't believe. Leave where you are. Leave your lower levels. Leave everything you have. Leave all of your holy ideas. Leave everything. Throw yourself on me, and it's going to be good. I'm going to take you to the promised land. This is the land that I'm going to show you. This is your land that's going to be yours for all time. Go. Abraham went. He's going to be great. He's going to be famous. He's going to be good, but not on his terms, on God's terms. He goes and he gets there, and there was a famine. There wasn't anything to eat. And Abraham, there was no one around. Everybody left, or they were dead. And he had to leave. What about God's promise? I thought God was the king of the world. This is the Holy Land. Abraham, they had to go to Egypt. Egypt was one of the most decadent places in the world. And that's what happened. Where's God? What's going on? I thought God was controlling the world. All of a sudden you think, listen, that's what you thought. You thought was God was controlling the world according to what your thoughts are. He was controlling the world according to your definition of God. Now you're going to see that God is infinitely greater and better than you can possibly imagine. When is that? To this day, we have not seen it. This is already 4,000 years we've been waiting. We still don't have the land of Israel. Right? Well, we have the land of Israel. That's not it, right? It's not it. We're worried about what America says and what Biden says. That guy's a criminal. And what he says and what everybody, we got to worry what Russia says and what this guy says. What the land of Israel does not belong to us. Now we're being forced that we have to come to some sort of a reality of who we really are, right? Who we really are, right? That we're not here because of the Balfour Declaration, or because of the white papers, or because we have the agreement of the United Nations, or because of this, because all these people are throwing away all these things. We have to realize, hey, the only reason that we have a right to be in the land of Israel is because, we got to admit it, guys, we're Jews. We're Jews. No, don't say that. Don't say it. Listen, we're not saying it. The non-Jews are forcing us to say it, and it's the only thing that'll work. We're Jews, and we are God's people. And God personally gave us this land. All of a sudden, a whole new thing. Really, that God exists? God cares? God really gave it here? We're the Jews. Why does everybody hate us? Because we're God's people. And that's what happened when God commanded Abraham. Go out from your ideas. Live according to what I think. I want this world to be a holy place. That's what I want. And it's going to happen only when you cooperate with me. I need your partnership. Abraham, by means that Abraham did the commandment of God, the Yetzirah, and he left from his land and his birthplace, and he went to the land where God showed him. God said, I will appear and I will reveal you, who you really are. The mahutcha, what is your essence? What a Jew is. What a Jew's real essence really is. It's not that Jews are excellent pianists or Jews are excellent, they can win Nobel Prizes. Those are good things. It's wonderful things. But that's not the true identity of a Jew. That's just an aspect of it. What's the true identity of a Jew? That they can reveal the Creator and the creation in the world, nitgala ba'oretz, in the world. Mitziuto, mahuto, va'atzmuto, the true existence of God will be revealed here. Let's try this. Here we go. Well, that's the whole novelty of go out from your land to the land that I will show you. That Abraham did not satisfy himself, was not sufficient with the service that he did for 75 years previously. Even though it was very, very high. But according to the commandment of God, he left from where he was. He left everything, his whole comfort zone, even though his comfort zone was a holy comfort zone. And he was always trying to do more. Nevertheless, Yotzi, he left it all. Then Abraham became a mover. The true moving means halicha, going shalo be'erech, incomparable to where he was. That he goes out totally from his place where he was before. Halicha shalamayla, which is above any limitation. Ubazeh gufam, this itself, haya etzlo, was hemshech shel halicha v'nesia dargot acha darga, level after level. He didn't become more and more spiritual. He became more and more godly, more and more dynamic in this physical world. Abraham became more and more alive excuse me, in this world. In two ways. Whether we're talking about from below to above, that the land of Haran, it elevated itself to a place of Areka, where I will show you the land of Israel. Vareka, kapishut, what does it mean? I will, the land of Haran will be the place of Abraham. It'll become elevated. Hain milamaylam, or whether from above to below. Above to below, there's, you have in the world, you have, especially the Jewish people do this, but generally in the world, you have somebody from who knows from Uganda, and he wins the world weightlifting championship. All the people in Uganda are, whoa, they're happy, they feel now who I am so happy. This is us, this is really me. One person, and it elevates the whole entire country. Well, Abraham came from Haran. Haran was a terrible place. But when Abraham elevated and he became the representative of God, that elevated the whole entire place. Avram, he came from that he worships God. He brings God into the world. He's one of us. He's one of us. He elevated Haran. That's from below to above. Took the lowest country in the world and elevated it. Also from above to below. Shehu itchil, that he began to do what's called making blessings in the world, the attachment of the upper worlds of the Creator down here with the creation, lahamshich, to draw down godliness into this physical world. This physical world, there's nothing below it. But often in a way that's the highest that could possibly be, not comparable. That was before this. Like we see even afterwards, after Abraham did the mitzvah, the commandment of circumcision, says B'shino Yashem, that Abraham and his name got changed. Ki avamon goyim. All of a sudden, one person became the father of all mankind. Lifnei Cain, beforehand, Abraham was called Avaram, a high father. Shaloya Av El Aram. It says he was only representative, he could only elevate the country where he was, called Aram Narayan. The Akshav now, that's the same thing as Or Kazdim and Haram. Akshav now, Abraham became a father of the whole entire world, all mankind. People that didn't even know about him. Hainu Shenasta Etzelo Halicha Ba'avoda Ba'olam, that he became walking in his service in the world. Who Paul at the Burur, he made an elevation, not just on the place where he was, but on the whole entire world. Now, this sort of explains a little bit. I mean, all of the world knows this. Every human being in the world knows, whether consciously or subconsciously, even if he doesn't know what Jews are, but they know that the Jews are somehow or other the chosen people. Even the people that never saw the Torah. I was in Japan and China, they never even heard of a Jew. A lot of them never heard of the Bible. They don't know what you're talking about, right? But nevertheless, somehow or other, it creeps in that into the newspapers, every news, what's going on in Israel? What's happening in Israel? Right? Israel, right? A Jew throws a stone at an Arab. Oh, he threw it. People are murderous people. Now we understand why there was a Holocaust, right? The Jews are supposed to act different. The Jews, they're supposed to be, I don't know what they're supposed to do, but they're supposed to do something different than everybody else. They're held accountable. Every Jew is, right? So somehow or other, Jude, I mean, even this thing of anti-Semitism, the whole idea of why people hate Jews. Why do they hate Jews? For what? Because they got all the money, because they're communists, because they're capitalists, because they're too smart, because they're hiding something, because they're revealing something, because nobody knows why. What's going on? Everyone knows that they came from Abraham, and Abraham was chosen to have an effect on the whole entire world, whether they know it or not. Nasa Av, he became a father for the whole world. A father cares for his children. Balabayit, he became, how do you say, the owner, the boss over all of them. And even though that he is just one, and he's outnumbered, 8 billion to 1. How many people were in the world back then? I don't know. But Od Yosef, even more, not only that he was called an Eitan, he did it in a powerful way. The Haba Hatalia, what happened? Is the key, even since that by Abraham was going, is the microphone working? I hope it's working. Was going in a way which is incomparable in his purification from below to, that he could affect even the lowest of lowest worlds, the whole world. Therefore, this brought to the ability that he could go higher and higher. Ereka. In other words, Abraham, by means of refining the lowest of the low, this elevated him to the highest of the high. Kamoken, similar the other way. Davga b'koach halicha l'mayla l'mayla yoter, by means of Abraham going higher and higher, yochlim levorer gamis tachton tachton b'yoter, he could purify the lowest. Ad until shetachtonim elyonim mitachtim. The same thing in Chabad. On one hand, Chabad goes out into the whole world. On the other hand, Chabad has all these amazing books of Chassidut that talk about the deepest possible ideas of Kabbalah and make them understandable to everyone. So on one hand, we can elevate ourselves to think about these tremendously high dimensions of godliness in the world. And on the other hand, we can go out into the streets and talk to people who don't even know anything about Judaism and say, hey, are you Jewish, sir? If you're not, there's the 7 Noahide commandments. If you are, then what about tefillin? You don't know what tefillin is? Here, I'll explain it to you. And let's do it first, and then I'll explain it to the lowest people. On the other hand, we have the ability to come from the highest to the lowest, and from the lowest to the highest. That's the idea of Lech Lecha.
Your video is still off.
What?
Your video is still not plugged in.
My video. 1 minute. This will be corrected. 1 second. I didn't see this. How do I do? Oh, I see. Here it is. There I go. Yeah.
Okay, we're back. Okay.
Yeah. That's like how it was before Mount Torah. You couldn't see on Mount Torah. You could see God as a little sort of how do you say, a demonstration. Yesh Lomar, we can say Shezeu. This is also the explanation. What it says Lech Lecha. Why it is the third Torah portion of the week. In the Torah, the third. First is Bereshit, the second is Noach, and the third one is Lech Lecha, number 3. And we're going to see that number 3 is connected with the Torah, and that's when we're going to start off tomorrow, God willing, at 8:15. Now, Yom Yom. It doesn't go off. I don't know why that icon doesn't work. Let's stop the share. Go over here.